Welcome to the annotation of a true clash of titans. In round 2 of the 2026 WR Rapid in Miami, Uzbek prodigy Javokhir Sindarov faced off against American superstar Hikaru Nakamura. Known for his bulletproof preparation and blitz mastery, Nakamura trotted out a super solid defense, but Sindarov was out for blood. Let's break down every single move of this modern tactical masterclass. Move 1. White sets the tempo. Black claims equal ground. 1e4. White. Sindarov advances the king's pawn 2 squares forward to e4. This classic opening move immediately controls the central d5 and f5 squares, while opening diagonal sightlines for both the light-squared bishop and the queen. 1e5. Black. Nakamura replies symmetrically by pushing his pawn to e5. Nakamura prevents white's pawn from advancing further into black's territory, establishes a solid stake in the center, and opens lines for his own light-squared bishop and queen. Move 2. Knight pressure meets counterattack. 2. Knight f3. White develops the king's knight to its optimal square, f3. This move does two things at once. It attacks black's undefended pawn on e5 and exerts control over the key central squares d4 and e5. 2. Knight f6. Black, instead of defending the e5 pawn with a standard move like 2. nc6, Nakamura plays the Petrov Defense, also known as the Russian game. He develops his knight to f6, ignoring white's threat and immediately counterattacking white's pawn on e4. Move 3. The modern attack begins. 3 d4. White chooses the aggressive modern attack against the Petrov rather than taking on e5 with 3. Next 5. By pushing the queen's pawn 2 squares to d4, Sindarov challenges black's central pawn on e5 head-on, seeking active piece play and an open game. 3. Knight takes e4. Black captures the pawn on e4 with his knight. 3. Knight takes e4. Nakamura accepts the central exchange, placing his knight on an advanced, active outpost while maintaining the pressure on white's center. Let's go to the Part 2. Mobilization and central friction, moves 4 to 9. Move 4. Challenging the outpost. For bishop d3. White. Sindarov moves the light-squared bishop to d3. This develops a minor piece with a direct threat, targeting black's advanced knight on e4 and preparing to castle kingside. 4 d5. Black. Nakamura pushes the queen's pawn 2 squares to d5. Nakamura solidly reinforces his advanced knight on e4 and claims an equal share of central space. Move 5. Neutralizing the central defender. 5. Knight takes e5. White takes black's pawn on e5 with the king's knight. 5. Next 5. White recaptures his material while placing a strongly posted knight in the heart of black's territory. 5. Knight d7. Black develops the queen's knight to d7. Nakamura immediately challenges white's well-placed knight on e5, offering a trade to reduce white's central pressure. Move 6. Simplifying the central knights. 6. Knight takes d7. White captures black's knight on d7 with his own knight. 6. nxd7. Sindarov avoids wasting time retreating and resolves the central knight tension. 6. Bishop takes d7. Black recaptures the knight with his light-squared bishop. 6. bxd7. Nakamura develops another piece, developing his bishop onto an active diagonal while keeping his pawn structure intact. Move 7. Kingside safety and bishop alignment. 7-0. White castles kingside. 7-0. Sindarov tucks his king away safely into the corner and brings his king's rook closer to the open e-file. 7. Bishop d6. Black moves the dark-squared bishop to d6. Nakamura places his bishop on a potent diagonal aimed directly toward white's king on h2, setting up potential kingside countertactics. Move 8. Striking at the knight base. 8. Knight c3. White moves the queen's knight to c3. Sindarov develops his final minor piece on the queen's side, putting direct pressure on black's strong knight outpost on e4. 8. Knight takes c3. Black captures white's knight on c3. 8. nxc3. Nakamura chooses to trade off his advanced knight rather than let white disrupt his structure, preventing white from gaining an easy central trade on his own terms. Move 9. structure shift and castling. 9. B takes c3. White recaptures black's knight with his b pawn. 9. Bx c3. While this doubles white's pawns on the c-file, it grants white an open b-file for future rook operations and fortifies control over d4. 9 low. Black castles kingside. 9. Oh. Nakamura gets his king to safety and completes his primary opening development. Where the game stands. Both players have castled safely, but the pawn structure has transformed. White holds an open b-file and doubled c-pawns, while black maintains a compact, healthy kingside position. Ready to proceed with part 3 to see how Sindarov launches his direct assault on Hikaru's king? Let me know whenever you'd like to continue. Let's go to the part 3. Part 3. The attack formulates and pawn clashes, moves 10 to 14. Move 10. Aggressive queen launch and kingside expansion. 10. Queen h5. White. Sindarov shifts the queen aggressively to h5. Sindarov creates an immediate dual threat. He targets black's undefended pawn on d5, while eyeing the weak h7 square near black's king. 10 f5. Black. Nakamura advances the f-pawn to f5. Nakamura shuts down the queen's threat on d5, reinforces his central control, and cuts off potential diagonal threats, though it slightly loosens his kingside pawn shield. Move 11, claiming the open file. 11. Rook b1. White slides the queen's rook to the semi-open b1 square. Sindarov takes instant advantage of the structural trade from move 9, targeting black's undefended pawn on b7. 11. b6. Black advances the b-pawn one step to b6. Nakamura safely defends the b7 pawn and solidifies his queenside chain. Move 12, controlling the open e-file. 12. Rook e1. White moves the king's rook to the open e1 square. Sindarov takes ownership of the game's primary open file, preparing to infiltrate deeper into black's camp. 12. c6. Black pushes the c-pawn to c6. Nakamura fortifies his central pawn on d5, building a rock-solid diagonal barrier against any potential dark-squared bishop maneuvers. Move 13, challenging the central structure. 13. c4. White strikes at black center with. Sindarov undermines Nakamura's central d5 anchor, attempting to open up lines to activate his own light-squared bishop. 13. d takes c4. Black captures the pawn on c4 with Nakamura accepts the central trade, opening up diagonals and temporarily surrendering his central hold to gain active piece dynamics. Move 14, activating the bishop with check. 14. Bishop takes c4 check. White recaptures on c4 with his light-squared bishop. The bishop comes alive on a powerful long diagonal, delivering an immediate check to black's king. 14. King h8. Black steps the king out of check into the corner on h8. Nakamura safely sidesteps the bishop's line of fire, tucking his king into the deep corner. Where the game stands. Sindarov's pieces are buzzing with energy. His queen, rook, and light-squared bishop are all fully mobilized and pointed toward the king's side. Nakamura's king is in the corner, setting up a high-stakes tactical showdown. Ready to move on to part 4 to watch the brilliant tactics unfold? Just say the word, let's go to the part 4. Part 4. Pinning, sacrifices, and the infiltration, moves 15 to 18. Move 15, pinning the defender. 15. Bishop g5. White. Sindarov moves the dark-squared bishop to bg5. Sindarov develops his final minor piece with maximum impact, pinning black's queen on c7 and targeting the dark square weaknesses in black's camp. 15. Queen c7. Black. Nakamura slides the queen to qc7. Nakamura steps out of the pin while keeping an eye on key central and kingside diagonals, as well as protecting his dark squares. Move 16, targeting the defenses. 16. Bishop f7. White lunges forward with 16. Bishop f7, placing the light-squared bishop directly on f7. This move infiltrates black's defenses, threatening the rook on f8 and cutting off vital defensive lines near the king. 16. Bishop takes h2 check. Black strikes back with 16. bxh2+, taking the pawn on h2 with check. Nakamura uses a tactical counterattack to snatch a pawn and drag the white king out of its fortress. Move 17. Evading check and neutralizing the bishop. 17. King h1. White steps the king out of check to kh1. Sindarov calmly slides into the corner, keeping his king safe while maintaining the lethal threat of his advanced bishop on f7. 17. Bishop f4. Black relocates the bishop to bf4. Nakamura offers a trade of dark-squared bishops to relieve the mounting pressure on his kingside and neutralize white's aggressive bishop structure. Move 18. Infiltrating the 7th rank. 18. Rook e7. White infiltrates the 7th rank with 18. Rook e7. Sindarov ignores passive defense and places his rook on the ultimate attacking rank, directly threatening Nakamura's queen on c7. 18. Rook ad8. Black slides the queen's rook to rad8. Nakamura defends his pinned light-squared bishop on d7 and brings his last offline piece into play to shore up his defense. Where the game stands. The position is on a razor's edge. White's rook dominates the 7th rank, and his dark-squared bishop controls key diagonals. Black is fighting tooth and nail, set up for an explosive tactical finale. Ready for part 5, the dramatic conclusion and final tactical blow? Let's finish this breakdown. Let's go to the part 5. The tactical masterpiece and final knockout. Moves 19 to 22. Move 19. The devastating sacrifice. 19. Bishop f6. White. Sindarov executes a stunning bishop sacrifice on f6. Sindarov places his bishop directly in front of black's g7 pawn, creating a terrifying mate threat on g7 alongside his queen on h5. 19. Queen d6. Black. Nakamura moves his queen to qd6. Nakamura cannot accept the sacrifice. Queen h6 leads to immediate checkmate. Instead, he attacks both white's rook on e7 and bishop on f6, trying desperately to keep his king's cover alive. Move 20. Deflecting the guard. 20. Bishop g6. White ignores the double threat and plays another brilliant move. 20. bg6. Sindarov shields his queen's line to h7, creating an unstoppable checkmate threat while leaving his rook on e7 hanging. 20. h6. Black advances the h-pawn to h6. Nakamura attempts to create an escape hatch and block the queen's direct path to h7, as capturing the rook or bishop leads to immediate forced mate. Move 21. Ripping open the fortress. 21. Bishop takes g7 check. White crashes through on g7 with 21. bxg7 plus. Sindarov sack smashes the final pawn shield defending the king, delivering a check and forcing black's hand. 21. King g8. Black steps the king to kg8. Capturing the bishop leads to 22. qh7 checkmate. So Nakamura is forced to retreat into the corner, hoping for a miracle defense. Move 22. The decisive final blow. 22. Bishop h7 check. White delivers the decisive check on h7 with the light-squared bishop forces black's king into a lethal mating net. With inescapable checkmate or ruinous loss of material on the very next turn, Nakamura stops the clock and resigns, 1-0. If you interest this video, please subscribe and press the bell icon. OK. Thanks. God bless everyone.